name is Emily Warren, and when I look back at the fall of last year, it still feels unreal how quickly life can unravel. One morning I had a routine, a paycheck, and a sense of stability. By sunset I was carrying a cardboard box filled with the contents of my desk. A mug with fading paint, a dying plant I kept trying to save, and a stack of papers I didn't even need but took because they made me feel like my years there meant something. Losing my job wasn't dramatic. No yelling, no dramatic showdown. Just a quiet meeting, an apologetic smile, and the sentence I couldn't get out of my head for months: we're downsizing. Today is your last day. I walked through the cold November wind trying to hold myself together, but my thoughts were louder than the traffic. How was I going to pay rent? What would I tell my parents, who already worried about me because I lived alone in Chicago? And how would I convince myself that everything would somehow be okay when nothing felt okay anymore? For the first week, I tried to focus. I made lists. I updated my resume. I applied to jobs until my eyes burned. But every morning I woke up with a heaviness I couldn't describe. The days blurred together, an endless cycle of applications, rejections, and microwaved leftovers. I told myself it was temporary, but the silence of my inbox began to feel like a verdict. By the third week, my savings had dwindled enough that I stopped thinking about future goals and started thinking about survival. I downsized everything: subscriptions, groceries, even heating. Some nights I sat wrapped in 2 blankets while the city wind shook my windows, and I wondered how a life that once felt stable could slip away so quickly. Then came the day everything changed. I had applied to a local community center for a part-time administrative assistant role. Nothing glamorous, nothing close to what I had planned for myself, but something. I walked into the interview expecting another polite rejection. Instead, I was greeted by a tall man in his late 40s with warm eyes and a calm voice. His name was Daniel Hart, the program's director. He didn't rush through the interview. He didn't even flip through my resume while pretending to know what he was looking for. He asked real questions. He listened. When I told him briefly, trying not to sound desperate, that I had been recently laid off, he nodded with genuine empathy. When the interview ended, I thanked him and expected nothing. I had learned not to hope too much. But that afternoon, while sitting on my couch surrounded by grocery store receipts and unanswered emails, my phone rang. Emily, this is Daniel Hart. We'd like to offer you the position. My breath caught. I stared at my peeling ceiling and felt something unfamiliar that month: relief. Even if it was part-time, even if it barely covered my expenses, it was something solid to stand on. My first day at the center was overwhelming in the best way. Kids ran down the hallways laughing, volunteers carried boxes of donations, and the staff moved with the kind of energy that made the building feel alive. My job was mostly paperwork, scheduling, and checking in visitors. It wasn't the career I once dreamed of, but it gave my days purpose again. Daniel was a supportive supervisor, patient, kind, and respectful. He never micromanaged. He checked in briefly each morning, made sure I wasn't drowning in tasks, and trusted me to handle things on my own. It felt good to be useful again. But outside the center, life remained difficult. Rent was still overdue. My checking account hovered at numbers that made my stomach twist. I ate cheaper meals, walked instead of taking buses, and kept telling myself that once I found something full-time, I'd finally breathe again. One evening, after everyone else had left, I stayed late to finish organizing files for an upcoming event. The center was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every sound echo. I didn't know Daniel was still in the building until I heard him approaching my desk. "You're still here?" he asked gently. I straightened up quickly. "Just finishing this last set. It's easier when no one's around." He smiled. "I appreciate your dedication, but make sure you take care of yourself too." I nodded, but something in my expression must have betrayed me because he paused, studying me with concern, not intrusive but sincere. "Emily, are you doing okay? You seem a little worn out lately." I hesitated. I wasn't the type to unload my problems on a supervisor. But after weeks of carrying everything alone, the truth slipped out quieter than a whisper. "I'm trying," I said. "Just juggling a lot." Daniel didn't press for details. Instead, he said something simple that made my chest tighten. "If you ever need support, please don't hesitate to ask. We value you here." I thanked him, but I didn't tell him that my bank account had dipped so low I was choosing between bus fare and groceries. I didn't tell him that I sometimes cried quietly at night because I didn't know when life would get easier. I didn't tell him that every day I pretended to be fine because I didn't want pity. Weeks passed, and December arrived with heavy snow. The center became busier than ever with holiday programs. I worked extra hours whenever possible, grateful for every additional dollar. Then one morning, Daniel called me into his office. I braced myself, afraid he might say the center was cutting hours or eliminating roles. My pulse quickened as I stepped inside. "Emily," he began, "I want to talk to you about something important." My heart dropped. He continued, "You've been doing exceptional work. Everyone here notices it. And I've also noticed that you've been pushing yourself incredibly hard." I looked down. "I'm just trying to do my best." "You're doing more than that," he said kindly. "And that's why I wanted to make you an offer." I blinked. "An offer?" Daniel folded his hands. "We've been planning to expand our community outreach programs in January, and we need someone reliable and dedicated to help lead the administrative side. It would be a full-time position. Steady hours, benefits, and a significant salary increase compared to what you're currently getting." The room blurred for a moment. I had to steady myself. "You're offering me a full-time role with a long-term contract," he confirmed. "I believe in your potential. And I want you to have security. You deserve that." My throat tightened. I hadn't felt deserving of anything in months. I had felt like a failure, like someone barely holding herself together. But in that moment someone saw worth in me, real worth. I don't know what to say," I whispered. "Say you'll think about it," he said with a gentle smile. No pressure. But there was no thinking needed. "Yes," I said, a tear slipping down before I could stop it. "I'd love to accept." Daniel stood and shook my hand warmly. "Welcome to the next chapter, Emily." When I stepped outside into the cold afternoon air, snowflakes landing softly in my hair, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: hope. Real hope. The kind that doesn't whisper but speaks loudly, reminding you that storms don't last forever. Over the next few weeks, everything shifted. My finances stabilized. I could finally breathe. My confidence returned slowly, piece by piece, like someone rebuilding a bridge they once feared crossing. The community center felt like home, and each day I grew more passionate about our mission. I never forgot the day I lost my job. But I also never forgot the day Daniel offered me a chance when I needed it most. Not a handout, not pity, a real opportunity, one rooted in belief. And that offer didn't just change my situation. It changed me. It reminded me that people can be kind, that life can pivot in an instant, and that sometimes the worst moments lead us to the places we were always meant to be. Looking back now, I'm grateful for every struggle, every tear, every month of uncertainty. Because without them, I would never have walked through the doors of that community center. I would never have met the team that became like family. And I would never have discovered the strength I didn't know I had. I was jobless and desperate. And then my boss made an offer that truly changed everything.